You've just set yourself listening to the Critical Cast, a web-based audio program that discusses various elements of popular culture from the 80s to the present day with depth and comedy. Music, film, television, games, countdowns and critiques, reviews and retrospectives. Created by people with diverse taste, for people with diverse taste. This is the Critical Cast with your host, the Critical Android. Digital greetings and a warm analog welcome to you. This is the Critical Cast. I am the Critical Android, and joining me for this episode is Erik.
Thank you.
Big surprise there. Erik, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well.
Gotta ask you a question, though. Sometimes I get nervous about things, start shaking, or like when I get really mad, I'll start to feel like my hands shake. I don't know if you've ever had that happen. You ever been in a situation like that?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Oh, okay. So, see, there you go. You get angry, the hand starts to shake, and I just wish there was somebody who would come out and say, it's like, what's that in your hand? Is that a tremor? It's like, no, that's a graboid. Because that's what we're going to be talking about today. Tremors and graboids. Fantastic. The monster horror comedy franchise, near and dear to my heart.
I love this series, and it's still going strong.
Yeah, apparently it still is. For those of you who aren't familiar, Tremors was a 1990 film starring Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward, who does not get enough work, mind you, but there he is.
No, he doesn't. I love Fred Ward.
It's made as kind of a legitimate monster movie, but at the same time, kind of a parody of them. It's kind of a weird little combination of things thrown together there. The franchise started off, like I said, in 1990 with this first film, which was directed by Ron Underwood. And it's a really kind of uniquely intelligent B-movie, I guess you could say, that has some legitimate fun to it.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to describe it, actually.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a way to put it, and like that's the only thing I can think of, is that it's legitimately like a fun B-movie that is probably better than it has any right to be, but sure enough, I mean, it's just quite good.
Yeah, it really caught on. Because there are times when it's legitimately kind of tense and somewhat frightening. And then there are other times where it's just like, it's so campy, but amazing. I mean...
Yeah, and the weird thing was that the movie really didn't do too well at the box office. It was made off of a budget of $11 million, and it only grossed $16.6 million. But it actually caught on pretty well on home video and on television broadcasts, to where it became like a legitimate cult classic.
Yeah, I think the first time I saw it was on USA or something like that.
First time I saw it was that we rented the movie because my mother was a huge fan of horror films of all kinds. And this is one that, you know, my father actually wasn't upset about because he generally didn't like us watching. I don't want you kids watching all that fucking bullshit with the fucking serial killers and that. It's too. You kids shouldn't be watching that shit. He was perfectly fine with Tremors, though. And I don't know if it
Giant subterranean worms. That's cool.
He was perfectly fine with it. Like, he legitimately enjoyed the movie, and I don't know if it was because of his affection for Michael Gross's character of Bert.
I think we all know why your dad enjoyed the movie.
It was probably because of Bert, to be honest.
Yeah. I love your dad. I think we know why.
He was a good man.
Bert really speaks to him.
Yeah. But in this first Tremors movie, we're introduced to Val and Earl, who are just kind of handymen who are in the town of Perfection, Nevada, which is apparently some sort of like an isolated community in the mountains, or between the mountains, I should say. It's definitely a valley of sorts. But you know, they're going out and they're trying to just fix some things that are, you know, they're being called upon. They realize that there's some weird shit going on when they climb up an electrical tower and they see a guy just up there, like, dead. Edgar, I think his name was. And he apparently, like, died of dehydration stuck up on a pole. And to them, it's just absolutely baffling. Like, why would somebody die from being up on a pole too long?
Yeah, like, why wouldn't they come down after a while? Like, it just makes no sense.
Exactly. So it's really weird. And then they find out that there's a seismologist who's visiting, and Kevin Bacon's character, Val, has dreams that she's like some Playboy model with legs that go all the way up, as he shouts as they're driving along. And then they find out she's a decent-looking woman, but she's not, you know, like model quality, so to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's investigating some strange seismic activity that they've been detecting in Perfection, Nevada. But she doesn't know what the hell it is. A few more things are going strangely. They're called out to a ranch where they're looking for some guy. I think it's Fred, because Fred and his sheep are just missing. And so they see Fred's hat on the ground, they pick it up, and there's Fred's head sticking out of the ground. And a legitimate jump scare moment, by the way, I should add.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're really just kind of just freaking out about what the fuck is going on around this place. And I'll let you describe what they actually find out is happening.
After some more discovery, they find out that there are these very large subterranean worms that apparently no one has ever discovered before or known about, and they're attracted to vibrations in the ground, which is why the guy climbed up the pole, tried to come back down, because he has no way of knowing where these things were or how they were detecting him, or when they could possibly come up the ground and kill him. That's why Fred's sheep were all missing, because the worms killed them, ate them all. They're stampeding around. And then it changes course, I guess, with the movie, because it's like now it becomes a matter of how do we get out of this town, because no one's coming for us. No one can really get in here, kind of help us out. So we're all on our own, and the town sort of has to band together to figure out how the hell they're all going to get out of this situation. As we pointed out earlier, one of the townspeople is played by Michael Gross, the dad from Family Ties. This is the strangest turn for him to take after that role.
Yes.
Kindly, Mr. Keaton, the public television manager, becomes this sort of anti-government, extreme libertarian, gun-toting maniac living in this town with his wife, played by Reba McEntire.
Very well by Reba McEntire, I should add. She's actually very good in this.
Yeah, excellent. There's a great scene in they sort of have this compound that sits up on a hill, and one of the worms actually busts through their wall, and as the other townspeople are listening in on this on a radio, they hear Bert and his wife just like blasting the shit out of this thing with this like wall of ammunition that they have, every gun and explosive you can possibly imagine, and they just finally annihilate it.
I love after they annihilate it. I love this because he shouts on the radio, "We got the mother humper!" Yeah. And they find out that there's 4 of these things from the seismographs. They find out that one of they killed the first one completely by accident, because what they ended up doing was they were trying to run from this thing, because once they figured out what was going on, they tried to do everything that they could, because they were going to be stuck out in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
Till they realized they were starting to hunt by ground, and they had this thing as they were trying to run. It like just trying to chase them, and it runs smack dab into a concrete wall that was used for like sort of like a divot that they had that was supposed to run like either water or something through that part of the desert. And because it smashed into the concrete wall, not knowing that it's there because it's blind, it accidentally kills itself. And that's where they're able to get the first look at this thing, because they peel back the concrete and see that this thing's just like this beast with tentacles in its mouth and whatnot.
Yeah.
They're able to pick up on what the hell it is. And so Bert kills the second one.
Yeah.
And again, victoriously cries out, "We got the mother humper!" And that's great, Bert, but there are two more big mother humpers. So as they continue to correspond by CB radio, they start to coordinate as a town to be able to get out of there, knowing what the hell's happening. And they manage to get to this old like Caterpillar truck that they realize that these graboids, so named by Victor Chang, the store owner, who is also eaten by one of them, because as it comes up through the floor of the general store and kills him, they get into this cat vehicle, and they're starting to drive away with it. But then in order to, since the graboids can't pull it under, they actually get smart, and they dig like a ditch that it falls into that it can't get back out of.
Yeah.
And so
Council's plan is to get on the other side of the mountains, where the graboids cannot get through. They can't get through the rock.
Right, yeah. So assuming that, all they had to do was get there, and they figure they're in a safe condition. But once this happens, when the caterpillar is stuck, the only thing that they can do is try to run for the rock formations that they see off in the distance. And so Bert is able to grab some bombs and his bomb material, and he runs out. And they throw a bomb to kind of like distract the things, and then they just run for it. and they manage to get out to the rocks, and they figure they're going to, either starve or dehydrate to death.
Yeah.
But this is where ingenuity comes into play, and they decide that they're going to go fishing. So they basically light one of these bombs with an extended fuse, take a rope, throw it out there, and they start, dragging it so that they can hopefully, kind of...
create some vibration.
Yeah, sense the vibrations, and sure enough, one of them eats the bomb, it blows up, and then they realize that they've only got one more of these things left.
Yeah.
So they repeat the strategy, only for it to shoot the bomb back up, realizing that it's not food, but it lands back on the rock with the rest of the material that Bert had for the bombs, and they basically all have to run and scatter, which leaves them in a very dangerous position, to where the solution they come up with is basically throw the bomb towards one area so that it chases the graboid, and hopefully chases it towards Kevin Bacon, where he's near the cliffside. The hope would be that if he can get it to come towards the cliff full barrel like that, it will shoot out of the ground and into the ravine where it will die.
Yeah.
And he takes the risk, and the graboid chases after him, and he dives off to the side, looks out as it comes out of the ground. It's like, "Can you fly, you motherfucker?" And it crashes onto the rocks, dies, and they successfully killed them all.
Yeah.
So it's a victorious end to the first film, as Val gets to ride off with his seismologist girlfriend now.
Yeah.
And it's a really good movie.
It is. It's filled with a lot of suspense, a lot of good, scary stuff. Like you mentioned about the taking the hat off the person's head. It's a quality made movie. It's got interesting, funny characters. They're all you need.
Yeah, and also there's, at one point in time, they're trying to, go from rock formation to rock formation, Earl, Val, and I think Rhonda's the name of the girl. And they're, trying to, go from rock formation to rock formation to get back to a truck, so they start, using sticks to kind of, pole vault between the rock formations.
Yeah.
And so it kind of adds this element that, kids would always play of, don't touch the ground is lava.
Yeah.
Which has always confused me about why kids always settle on lava, how this was a universal thing.
It's always lava.
It was always lava. It's like there was some sort of collective consciousness that just said, ground is lava, and all the kids picked up on it. So it kind of adds that, element that people kind of realize, okay, don't touch the ground is dangerous.
Yeah.
And it really plays off of that, and also introduces these monsters in a kind of very realistic way. Because, yes, something that's underground isn't going to be able to hunt by sight, so what's it going to be able to do? Hunt by vibrations.
Yeah.
So because the monsters are presented rather believably like that, I think it really helps this movie out in terms of legitimately creating that sense of tension.
Yeah. And the fact that you just can't see them. You have no idea where your attacker's coming from.
You just have to look for some sort of ripple in the ground and hope that, you actually catch that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's really well done in that sense. And, yeah, Bert, the character of Bert Gummer, really kind of steals the show away Fred Ward and Kevin Bacon, thanks to Michael Gross's play this character out perfectly.
To the point now where it's always weird to see him in other things, because it's like, he's become Bert. And he's become actually the star of the franchise, of all people.
Now, it wasn't Kevin Bacon who became the star, but it was Michael Gross. But you do have some running gags in there, too, that are funny. When Val and Earl, they always do paper, rock, scissors to decide who does something, even at the most dangerous of situations.
Yeah.
This movie is great for network airings, when they have to edit out for language, because there's a great line where they're trying to get into the caterpillar, and there's some dissension going on, and Kevin Bacon yells out, "We should have left your worthless ass on the roof!" This is edited in broadcast where you hear him go, "We should have left your worthless hide on the roof!" It's like they didn't even try to make it sound like Kevin Bacon. It was just somebody off the street who was in the middle of eating donuts or something. And there's a 46-year-old baritone just comes in. It's like, "Could you read this word?" Hide. And that's what they used. All right, that was the one take. That's all we got. Roll it. So, yeah, I love the movies for that. But then we get then, oddly enough, this is one of those very weird circumstances where this happens, where the movie actually does get a sequel, but it's released straight to video, and arguably, the sequel is even better than the original.
Yeah, I would say. I think we both included it on our list of sequels that were better than the first one, or sequels that were better than another one of the movies.
Yes, we did. We did indeed agree to that.
Yeah, I would say it is.
We weren't even planning it, but they both ended up there. Tremors 2 Aftershocks was released in 96.
Quite the gap here.
6 years after the original. Yeah, quite a gap. And I remember when I first read that this existed, it's either in a magazine or something, and I saw, it's like, oh my God, Dad, there's a Tremors 2. And Dad's like, what the fuck? It's like they released the second Tremors. He's like, well, we gotta rent that son of a bitch. And it's like, I think that day he found out, he went out to the store and asked if they had the movie and rented it and came back with it. We watched this movie so much we wore out the videotape. Like, I swear, we wore the thing out and we had to tape it again off of HBO once so that we had to rewatch again because we loved the movie so much. This was a recurring program that would air in our household, like you know how AMC would run the Raiders of the Lost Ark and Indiana Jones movies when they got the rights to it.
Yes,
that was like what Tremors 2 was doing, or like when USA was running Problem Child and Problem Child 2. That was Tremors 2 in our household all the time. So this time we're down in Mexico.
Yep.
Where we find out a little bit of backstory that Val and Rhonda went off and got married, and Earl is left on an ostrich farm.
Yep.
And he finds out from a guy named Grady that the Mexican government is looking to eliminate a graboid problem that they've developed. And so they've been kind of keeping it under wraps, even though graboids are now famous in the world because of the discovery that happened in Nevada. These creatures have now become some sort of like cultural phenomena.
There's like video games and all this licensing shit that went on. And
yeah.
And you find out that Earl didn't really profit as much as like you would have thought he would have off of this.
No, Val kind of took the lion's share of everything.
Yeah.
And so Earl's kind of just like, dejected and all all this stuff.
He's waiting for his big break. And he thinks that this might be the case because, as you pointed out, the Mexican government, they have an oil company, a national oil company, and they can't extract any oil out of the ground because the graboids are killing all of their workers.
Earl agrees that he's going to go, and they're going to, try to eliminate these things for the Mexican government. Yeah. Earl and Grady get together, and they come up with a system. Instead of using, rope and bombs, they decide that they're going to use remote-controlled detonators or remote-controlled cars, which is a much better strategy.
Yeah.
Because they realize there's a lot of these things, quite a bit of them, and they also meet up with a geologist named Kate, played by Helen Shaver, who is letting them know about what's happening with the graboids and that she's been studying them, and that they are Precambrian life forms.
Yeah.
And Earl's like, what's that talking about? Like, old? It's like older than old. Like, these could be older than dinosaurs. It's like, shit. I always thought these things came from outer space.
Yeah.
Which is funny, because in the first Tremors, he mentions the idea that they could be aliens.
Yeah.
So a little nod to continuity here.
Yeah, they should do a good job with continuity. And I like that they don't really... We know nothing about them in the first one. That's what's kind of cool, is that in the first one, we know absolutely nothing about these things. Where they came from, why they exist, really just any of their biological makeup or anything. And in this one, we actually find out all that backstory. We finally learn more about these things and where they came from, what they are, and how they operate. And so I think that's kind of cool, is that they... And it's kind of like a running thing in Tremors, is that, you find out a little bit more about them each time in the next movie.
But realizing that they are kind of outgunned here a little bit, they decide to put in a call to somebody, and Grady's like, who'd be dumb enough to take on a mission like this in the middle of Mexico? And then you see the phone ring at Bert's house, and Bert picks it up. Hello? Oh, Earl, no, I'm not busy. You caught me at a good time, and, Bert's making up all these excuses. Because apparently Bert has just been living home alone now, just watching war movies, and just, living out his life, incredibly
his wife Heather has left him.
And then you find out... Yes, Heather left him, and just like she said that I became... God, this is great. After the fall of the Soviet Union, I became depressed, and she said she couldn't live with me without there being a threat of a Soviet incursion.
Well, you did take that kind of hard, Bert.
Which is so great.
The man loves this country.
Plus, I love what Bert does in that he comes up with this massive truck that's showing up on the seismographs as like the mother of all graboids. And
I just watched this the other week. It's yeah.
And Bert
I love it.
Bert gets out, and the first thing he says is, "Let me get this straight. The Mexican government offered you anything to use to work with, and you took one case of dynamite?
Yeah.
And Bert's got, like, a truck that's, like, filled to the brim with every kind of gun on Earth.
It's just weapons galore.
Along with 2 tons of explosives. Like, Eisenhower talked about overwhelming force. This is overwhelming force that Bert comes into play with.
It's why they chose him. I mean,
And so we get a lot of, like, comedic scenes, too, with them all hunting graboids, where Bert's, like, speaking into a recorder to like, chronicle his exploits of all this.
yeah.
It's like
He
saying,
wants a record of all of this.
like, I'm using a technique pioneered by one Earl Bassett, and, like, instead of using a remote-controlled truck, Bert's got, like, a remote-controlled tank with explosives in it, because it's Bert. He gets one. When he makes one explode, he calls up and he's like, just got another one. Earl's like, we know, Bert, we're cleaning it up from over here. So apparently Bert's using an insane amount of explosives.
Yeah. He wants to make sure they're really dead.
Yes. We come across something that is not expected, and we find out from one of the graboids that they see, they come across one that looks, they think it's sick, only to find out that it coughs up something that turns out to be an egg sac of a completely different graboid, which we they don't call them this in Tremors 2, but later on they're called Shriekers. But these
find
things,
out the opening minutes of Tremors 3.
Yes.
They named them Shriekers.
but these are bipedal creatures that they don't know what to do with. All they know is that, I love this line too, because it's one that you can repeat in everyday life. Earl sees it and he's like, it's a whole new ball game. It's a whole new goddamn ball game.
Which I believe they play in the trailers to the movie, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's great. And so, not only does all this happen, but apparently Bert runs into a scene where there's a bunch of them.
Well, first, like they're trying to figure stuff out, because there's cars and there's radio facilities that are being destroyed and stuff.
Yes.
And they're trying to figure out what it is, and it's they discover it's these Shrieker things. So they all head back to the base camp minus Bert. No one knows what the hell happened to Bert. He could be dead for anyone knows, because of this shit. They kill what they can, and they're all trying to figure out, okay, we gotta get the hell out of here. We're never gonna make it. This is insane. And then, as you pointed out, Bert apparently ran into a bunch of them. And what happens?
He comes back to the truck, and he gets out of it, and he's completely disheveled. And he's like, I feel I was denied critical, need to know information. It's like, Bert, what happened? Well, I ran into a cluster of them. The first few I managed to take out using heavy arms and running them over with the vehicle. When the second wave came, I had to resort to using a combination of small arms fire and hand-to-hand combat techniques. I am completely out of ammunition. This has never happened to me before.
I love that scene. It's so good.
Michael.
And then he's like, but I did manage to get one of the bastards. And he opens the back of the truck, and he's got a graboid or a Shrieker tied up in the back.
Which is where we learn that these things are heat-seeking, which is why they're able to find things the way that they do. Everything that they were hunting down, the radio towers, all that stuff, were things that emit heat. So what it looked like was actual intelligent thinking on their part was just a biological response to attack things that are hot. All this stuff happens, and they find out that the Shriekers reproduce asexually.
And they just call up a new one.
If they get enough to eat, they reproduce rather quickly. This turns out to be a bad thing, as the situation quickly gets out of hand, and they're forced to kind of retreat.
Yeah, because as what happens is, Bert, in addition to bringing on all the ammunition, brings in a shitload of MREs, and which are meals ready to eat. While they're examining the Shrieker that Bert captured, another one that was run over by the truck survived on the bottom of the truck and falls out the bottom, and then starts eating his MREs. And as Earl puts it, "They got into your damn superfood, Bert." And there's like 1,000 of them. It looks like 1,000 of them in this warehouse, just eating all of Bert's MREs and reproducing all over the place.
So they figure they got to try to get out of there, or they can't find a way to get out of here because they're all trapped. And Bert is out of all of his weaponry except for his World War I anti-tank gun. So there's a shrieker in between them and Julio's car. Julio being an assistant of Kate's who was killed. And so Bert decides, okay, we gotta kill this one shrieker, so he loads up his one shell from the anti-tank gun and fires it, and it makes the shrieker just explode.
Yeah. And Bert delivers a line that I use all the time today. Just doing what I can, what I got.
With what I got.
I find a way to work that into as many things as possible in my life.
It's a great line. Not only does the shell that he fired completely obliterate the shrieker, but it punches a hole through the concrete wall that the shrieker was standing in front of, punches through several different oil barrels, and also punches through the front of the car that they were trying to get into, and blows a hole straight through the engine so that when they get to the car, it is literally leaking every fluid that it has out onto the ground. And Bert's like, how was I to know? How was I supposed to know? Just absolutely devastated from this.
Yeah.
So then the only other solution that they have is to try to kill these things. And they come up with a plan for Earl to be doused in a fire extinguisher to hide his body heat. Which, should note, this is not physically possible.
Right. I do want to point out, though, that talked about the rock, paper, scissors that carries over into this because he does rock, paper, scissors with Grady. Because Grady thinks he should be the one to go in because he got everyone into this mess. And then Earl says, no, I should do it because I should be the one responsible for all this insanity. And so they do rock, paper, scissors, which Grady obviously wins. And then
he throws out paper.
Yeah. Earl wins, actually, right?
Grady throws paper, Earl throws rock.
Yeah.
And then Earl goes, I win, rock beats paper.
Yeah.
Just very emphatically states that. And Grady's so confused by the fact that he's used this logic that he's just looking at his hand trying to figure out what happens while Earl is going to get doused by the fire extinguisher.
I believe Earl goes, rock rips through paper.
And then later on, as Earl's getting into the place, Grady goes, wait a second, doesn't paper cover rock? And Bert looks at him and goes, paper always covers rock.
Bert just can't take it anymore.
And so Earl's trying to figure out what to do, and he doesn't know what to do to set the bombs, but he does see one with a timer. So he just goes and he sets it and he throws it into the truck, and he gets out of there perfectly fine, thankfully.
But he is starting to melt, so the shriekers start noticing it. So he just punches a bunch of numbers in, throws the bomb into the back of Bert's truck, and just climbs out the window. So when Bert finds this information out...
Yeah, Bert's like, well, what did you set? How many did you set? He's like, I don't know, Bert, I just punched a bunch of numbers in there and got the hell out. It's like, what?
He's like,
you did what?
And he goes, there are 2 tons of plastic explosives in there. Is that not going to be enough? Dear God, Bert,
tell me it's going to be enough.
Not going to be enough. Not enough.
And Bert's just loses his cool and doesn't have any words. He's like, and he just starts running.
Yeah. And he goes, it's going to be big. You got to get behind something. And he keeps running. And all the people are ahead of him because Bert doesn't run as fast as everyone else. And they all take cover behind the concrete wall. And Bert just keeps running past them. And he looks back and he goes, no,
it's gonna be big.
It's going to be big.
And so they finally get to a ditch. And he goes, okay, that's far enough.
This will have to do. And he's like, everyone get down and cover yourself.
And he says, it's going to be big. And Grady's just standing up there saying, is it going to be today?
As he says that, a fucking atomic bomb-looking explosion goes on.
Completely blows up everything in the area, including the wall they were going to hide behind.
Yeah. Vaporizing every shrieker in the area.
And then, as they find out they see the explosion, you realize that it's just left a large smoking crater in the ground where used to be a building. And that wraps up Tremors 2.
I love that.
Tremors 2 made on a budget of $4 million, so less money than the first movie, and it actually turns out to be better, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But then, after the wonderful fun that was the second film, we get to the series Lowlight of 2001's Tremors 3 Back to Perfection.
I remember very little about this movie. I have seen it once. I think it was with you, actually.
You were right. It's not really a good film. I saw maybe like 3 times, and that was about it. And that's all I ever wanted to see of it, because it just did not hold my interest at all. Basically what happens is that we go back to Perfection Valley. Earl's nowhere to be seen. Val's nowhere to be seen still. And we basically find out somehow that Bert is, I don't know if he's running the town now or what.
Yeah, he's sort of...
Might as well be.
He's definitely in charge somehow.
Yes. And there's some people like doing monster tours and whatnot. There's some ridiculous things that happen about graboids being an endangered species, and there's a big white one, some sort.
El Blanco.
Yeah, El Blanco, and they've evolved again to where instead of shriekers, now there's these flying ones that have some sort of pyrotechnic charge in them, and they call them ass blasters.
Yeah.
And they can fly, and...
Yeah,
it was just not a very good movie.
No, it tried too hard. It went too far in the stupidity. Like, the Shriekers were one thing, but then the Ass Blasters, it was just like, now you're just trying to be too cutesy. Like, you should have just kept it simple. And yeah, I remember they start killing them with a potato gun, I think, and yeah, there's like a big fight between Bert and the Department of Interior, I think, over the fact that Bert's pretty anti-government, so like, there's that like fight between the two of them, and they have to keep El Blanco safe because it's the last of its species or something. It's the white one. So yeah, there's really not a lot going on. The one thing I will say that I do love about it is the opening minutes where Bert shows up in Argentina, I think it is. He's meeting with the local media, and he goes, there was some graboids detected, and they evolved into 6 Shriekers. I was able to corral them here using a combination of tactics developed by Crazy Horse at Little Bighorn and Field Marshal Erwin Rommel during the North Africa campaign. It's like his insane encyclopedic knowledge of military history. It's insane. And then he lures like this wave of Shriekers just come hoarding over the mountains, and the media just like runs off terrified. And Bert gets into this like anti-aircraft weapon and just proceeds to obliterate them with like just rapid fire machine gun bullets coming out.
Oh, that's right. He just sits in the turret and just annihilates
and he's, like,
all of
laughing
them.
maniacally like a psychopath.
He loves it. Loving every moment of it. But yeah, I mean, once again, Michael Gross is truly the person carrying this film. Like, I do like the fact that we do revisit Perfection. We see people from the first film all grown up now, which is cool. But it's really not that well done, especially compared to the first two. We also find out that really the movie was also kind of a partial pilot for a Tremors television series. Fortunately, had Michael Gross in it, but that's about all I had going for it in terms of quality.
Yeah. I tried watching that series, and I did watch it again actually one time when I think randomly Sci-Fi Channel maybe a year or so ago ran a marathon of it, and I watched many of the episodes of it, and I don't know, like it sort of turned into like a bootleg version of the X-Files, where it wasn't like all graboid related stuff; it was other paranormal type of activities, and I don't know.
Yeah, because they had this substance called Mixmaster that was used for like genetic research, and somehow it like altered the genes of different flora and fauna in the area, creating all these weird shit that was happening.
Yeah.
And it was really just an excuse to try to milk the franchise for everything it had, and then beyond that.
Yeah.
And it really was not a good idea.
No.
So that is the kind of the sad history of where Tremors 3 led up to.
Yeah.
Because they tried to reuse the cast from Tremors 3 in the series, and just didn't really work out. Which then leads us to Tremors 4.
Yeah, which was a franchise revival.
Yeah, and oddly enough, it revives the franchise by being a prequel.
Yeah.
Which doesn't often happen like that.
But I actually thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, this takes place, Michael Gross is still in the movie playing one of Bert's ancestors, mind you.
I mean, no one would watch it if Michael Gross wasn't in it, so it makes complete sense to me.
Makes sense to me, too. They needed Michael Gross in this. I remember my brother Rodney so loved these movies that when he was in elementary school and they had to pick a celebrity to write to, Rodney picked Michael Gross.
That's awesome.
I mean, I'm sure you had people who were like writing to like Scott Stapp from Creed, but here's Rodney writing to Michael Gross. Didn't watch an episode of Family Ties, so it wasn't because of that. It was all because of Tremors. Yeah, as you pointed out, Tremors 4 did help revive the series, and I only watched it once, so I don't recall much of it at all.
It doesn't have, I don't think it has anything to do with the Shriekers or anything like that. I think they're just dealing with Graboids again.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, but we also find out that there's like another life form in the life cycle of the Graboid. There's like a pre kind of thing that's like when it's first hatched out of an egg. These things can like sort of fly through the air a little bit. So it's like the super larval stage of the Graboid. We also find out that the eggs of the Graboid actually can last for centuries and centuries, and they kind of look like, and they're activated by heat generally. So what happens is in the town, which will eventually become Perfection, but at this point it's called Rejection, Nevada. There's a silver mine. The silver mine starts discharging this hot water. It like disturbs a spring. So all this hot water starts pouring on all these Graboid eggs and activates them, and the Graboids hatch, and then they start killing people in the mine. Now, without the mine, which is the main economic source of the town, it's starting to fall apart. So the mine owner, Hiram Gummer, Bert's ancestor, shows up in town and wants to sort of figure out what the hell's going on. And then it's a bit of a rehash from the original movie after that. You also find out some other things along the way. Hiram has no money left. This is his only asset. And so he has pretty much staked his entire claim. Like, he needs this mine to be successful, and he's doing whatever it takes to get it up and running. Like I said, it becomes a bit of a rehash. So there's always Graboids, and they're trying to figure out how to kill them. Only now, unlike previous times, they don't have explosives. They don't have Bert's automatic fire, automatic weapons, and other explosives and high-powered ammunition. So they're trying to figure out how to do this in the 1800s. I'm not going to go into too much more detail because a lot of the stuff is similar to Tremors 1. Tremors just figuring out from scratch how to kill these things. They eventually do. The funny thing is, though, it's discovered that Hiram has absolutely no ability to fire a gun. He's terrible. Yes. He has terrible accuracy, and that's why at the very end he's seen with a Gatling gun, and he just starts shooting it, like firing off round after round after round, and he figures out like his true passion. He has this great look on his face, like, yeah, it's where he's starting to discover his love of firearms. And as you can see, that's passed down through generations of the Gummer family. But at the end, they determined that the silver mine is going to be operational again. We can't let anyone know about these things, otherwise the town will, no one will ever move here. They changed the name of the town from Rejection to Perfection. They start using the mine to sort of rebuild the town. Now, something obviously happened. The town obviously the silver mine probably went bust at some point, and the town is obviously impoverished again by the time Tremors 1 rolls around. I guess that's why Bert has a huge compound. I guess because his family was wealthy from the silver mine. So that explains like a lot of why Bert seems to live better than everyone else in the town.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how everything wraps up with that, which leads to what would have been the death of the franchise, if not for the fact that we actually got a Tremors 5.
Against all odds.
Straight to Netflix, which again, did not see that coming. Because it had been rumored for a while, and there was like a fake IMDb posting about it. But sure enough, we got Tremors 5 Bloodlines back in 2015.
I was so excited when that came out.
Now, I'm going to be honest here. I haven't gotten a chance to see it.
Oh, my God. Tremors enthusiast.
I know.
You need to do it.
I know. I feel ashamed. But I take it you have seen it.
I have seen it, yes.
And how is it?
It's okay. It's not as bad as Tremors 3. So that's, I still consider it better than Tremors 3. It's got Bert, killing stuff. What more could you want?
As long as it has Bert killing things, that is a big plus in my book.
Yeah. But I liked it better than Tremors 3 for sure. Was it better than Tremors 4? I don't know. Probably, maybe not. It's hard for me to hate on Tremors too much, unless it's truly as abysmal as like Tremors 3. So
yeah, that's fair game. So we won't have to go into detail. It's still fresh enough to where I don't want to spoil it for people.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it for anyone either. It's just they're basically, I think, back to still dealing with Graboids now, just in a different region of the world, and they're like a bit fundamentally different Graboids. They operate a little differently than normal Graboids.
It's good to know. So yeah, this is a horror franchise that it evolved away from horror the longer the franchise has gone on.
Yeah.
But the first one is a legitimately good B monster movie. The second one is just a straight up fun film.
Yeah.
That has a great amount of action comedy in it. So very well crafted. And again, it has lines that you can use in everyday life, whether you're just doing what you can with what you've got, or whether it's a whole new ball game, a whole new goddamn ball game. It's a series that I definitely think people should take the time to watch and enjoy. Hopefully, during this October Halloween season, you'll get the chance to watch one of these films. Definitely very highly recommended on my list. And, I'm not even a huge horror movie fan, but this one is one that I was drawn to and have remained drawn to ever since.
Yeah, same thing with me. I'm really not that big a horror fan for films, and I'm also not. I just you might think this is quasi science fiction type thing or something like that. I'm not really that big of a science fiction person either. The only reason I say that is because I think Tremors 4 aired originally on the Sci-Fi Channel. It was the original programming for the Sci-Fi Channel. But I still love these movies.
That's where Tremors the series ended up, as it was originally a sci-fi series. Oh, and I should note, too, that Tremors the series does have appearances from Christopher Lloyd.
It does.
Which might be the only other thing worth noting about it.
Yeah.
So, that'll wrap up this creepy episode of the Critical Cast as we discuss the Tremors franchise. So, Erik, thank you for joining me on it.
Well, thanks for having me.
And to everybody else who was listening, what do you think of Tremors? Have you taken in the franchise? Are you huge fans? Do you have no idea what the hell we're talking about? Let us know in the comments. But either way, we do wish you a fun Halloween. We'll probably have some more creepy stuff that we bring up in the upcoming weeks leading up to it. But for now, enjoy the Tremors. Don't confuse the monsters as Tremors. Those are graboids.
Right.
That's something my dad also did, referring to them as Tremors.
Yeah.
But either way, enjoy the films, thank you for watching, and have pleasant dreams of electric sheep.